Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and it's time to get wealthy. You're going to learn exactly what you need to know and do to finally achieve the level of financial success you desire and you deserve. Well, it's Black History Month, and after 20 years in the investment industry, it's hard to believe that I left to become a financial freedom fighter, a moniker the founder of this network, Roland Martin, gave me many years ago. And that's why today I'm excited to have another financial freedom fighter on air to share with us exactly what we need to do to be fearless around our finances. But before we get started, here's what they don't want you to know about what you need to be fearless about your finances. Number one is that financial ignorance is expensive. What you don't know can really impact the decisions that you make. Secondly, you cannot win if you're not playing to win. It's not about not losing, because the lower your risk, the lower your potential for reward. And that's why I'm excited to be introducing our next guest, Cassandra Cummings. She is founder of one of the largest Facebook groups devoted to Black women and teaching them how to invest. She's an author, she's a financial expert, and she's on Get Wealthy today to show us exactly what we need to do to fight for our financial freedom. So Cassandra, welcome back to Get Wealthy.
Thanks so much for having me, Deborah. I'm glad to be back.
Well, I'm glad you're back, because one of the things that I love about your book, Cassandra, is that in your book, you have put together what you call these fearless figures. And they're Black women who really are financial freedom fighters, but they're in a number of different areas. And I want to start off by asking you, because this is our framework for the show is mindset, strategy, and execution, was there anything common that you found around the mindset that all these women had to have to make their mark in the financial world?
Absolutely. They definitely were able to overcome fear. They did not let fear stop them. So they had a mission, they had a goal, and they did what they wanted, what they needed to do to absolutely achieve that goal. And I think also too, just the stick-to-itiveness, determination, perseverance, all played a big role in making sure that they were able to achieve their goals. So as you read through the fearless figures, you'll see that common thread weave throughout each of their stories.
One woman in particular who is actually a colleague and friend that you speak about is someone who devoted her life to sort of behavioral finance. She's Sandra Davis. And in that, she talks a lot about mindset, which I think is very important, because regardless of how much financial success you have in your career, you could still have a poverty mindset and end up with, still behaving as if you have no money. So in interviewing her, what are some takeaways that you had that you actually convey in the book?
Yeah, Sandra is sort of my auntie in my head, I like to say. She's one of my financial aunties out here as well. Sandra worked with me in a mastermind program that I have myself called Queens of Capital. And she really worked with the ladies to shift mindset. A lot of women are walking around with financial traumas, and being able to overcome those financial traumas are huge to get to your financial goals. And so Sandra, her attitude is to learn the lessons of these financial mistakes or traumas or, sticky decisions that they may have made around money, and really leave that shame behind, because you can't necessarily move forward if you're still carrying these financial bags around, really weighing you down and stopping you from being successful with money.
That's good. You know, one of the things that has become clear just in the work that we do on Wealthy You is that far too many women are giving from a half empty cup. And so it's almost like they're creating drama. And instead of giving with intention, they're giving from financial feeling obligated. And I know in your work, oftentimes you find that. And so the question I have for you is, some of the trauma, it has been done to us, and some of it is self-inflicted. So what would you say to our audience about, you know, what they can do to set boundaries and be more intentional about the financial decisions they make?
Yeah, my biggest thing is to really work with someone else, a financial professional, a money mentor, someone that's going to help you build that confidence. And I think in Fearless Finances, the reason why I highlighted Fearless Figures as well is to show that you are not alone. And this isn't something that you have to tackle by yourself. Just like people get fitness coaches, just like people have therapists, you probably need someone to also help you along the way with your money. And so don't feel like you have to really figure this out on your own, because it can be very difficult. It can be very emotional, and you need someone to help you navigate through those emotions that are tied to money to really help you overcome some of those challenges you may be facing.
Good point, Cassandra. What I do find, and you know, even myself included, as I, you know, began to have some career success, and with that came some monetary success as well. I I would often find it difficult to ask for help, and I think the root of that was like I felt like I was, you know, that I should know already, or in some cases, if I didn't know, I didn't want to let people know. And so, if there's someone in the audience who you just shared that, hey, we all need help, and maybe they're sitting on the, you know, they still have some apprehension about asking for help. What would you say would be the first step to them overcoming that sense of shame and actually approaching someone for help?
I mean, I think communities that are set up like the Stocks and Stiletto Society could be a good first step, because now you have a community of women where you can visually see that they are asking for help, they are answering questions, they are embracing one another and helping people where they are financially. And I think once you see that type of community, that gives you the courage, it emboldens you to then take it a step further and say, okay, how does this apply to me, and who can I possibly reach out to help me? I always say, look for someone who you admire from a financial standpoint, and start to ask that person questions like, what are you investing in? Or, how did you get started with XYZ investment? And that would give you an opportunity to see if they are willing to mentor you, if they're willing to actually expose some personal financial decisions that they've made along the way. And it really just sort of strikes up the conversation, because money is very personal. So I would just say that would be how you would get started, with finding someone you can connect with that can help you. A lot of times reading books, they'll have resources available to you inside of those, the books that you read, on additional communities or other organizations that you can become a part of, where you can also enlist assistance.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it, because a secret that I learned very early on in my career is to really ask very successful people about how they became successful, because people love talking about themselves as opposed to asking for help, asking them how they achieved what they achieved. People will go on and talk about themselves, and then they'll be more likely to want to help you because you're in a situation where you didn't necessarily say help me, but you said, well, how did you get where you are? And I love this, Cassandra, because in our next segment, we're going right into strategy to talk about what are some lessons that we can learn from some other fearless figures that you mentioned in your book, and also just the invaluable insight that you're bringing to us today. So don't go anywhere, folks. When we come back, it's all about the strategies that you can use to become fearless about your finances. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Let's be honest, as successful women, we're crushing it. Maxed out 401k and Roth IRA? Check. Aggressive savings and investments? Check. Yet, the freedom our success was supposed to buy can leave us stuck on the six-figure hamster wheel, watching retirement slip further down the road. There's another way. Get coaching courses and community at wealthyu.com.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Get Wealthy, and I'm Deborah Owens, and I'm having a fearless conversation with our guest today, Cassandra Cummings. She is the founder of Stocks and Stilettos and author of the new book, Fearless Finances. Cassandra, thanks so much for coming on Get Wealthy.
Thank you.
And this is all about strategy now. So in the book, you have several women that are fearless figures. And I would love for you to maybe pick one of them that that stands out in terms of the strategy that they took to accomplish the kind of success that they have financially.
Yeah, I mean, I think one that I would probably select might be Sheena Allen. Sheena Allen came into the society, but she is just a very young powerhouse, and she has definitely made inroads into the financial services industry with a very unorthodox pathway, if you will. And so she started off creating apps without, using a lot of code, but she was able to enlist developers and others to really help her get some apps up and going. And then she really took on this mission of helping our community, who happens to be made up of people who are underbanked and underserved when it comes to banking. And so I think just that initial thought of, I'm going to help people who go and use like check cashing places to do their banking. I'm going to help people who use the bank, but they're constantly being hit with overdraft fees. I think that just that whole thing with helping people who don't really have a great relationship with banking, just understand how important it is to have a good relationship with banking, because banking can actually open doors to being able to access other capital programs, having the ability to touch capital, to really build your financial life or to build your business life. And so I think just having that foresight to say, let me take a step back and let me help people in my community really get this banking down. That's going to be a game changer long term for a lot of our people who have shied away from using banking. I talk about that in my book. My mom would go to the post office and actually get money orders to pay her phone, pay her phone bill, pay her rent and things of that nature. And at one point, I thought that was how you did banking. And then, there are other ways in which people have found these alternative ways in which they use banking or, outside of banking to really just survive on a day-to-day basis. So I think Sheena Allen is just a great, great example. We've got some other women who are doing some amazing things, but I think just keeping that in perspective, like, hey, I'm going to help my people. And as you know, as a matter of fact, I'm going to do well and I'm going to earn a, pretty good penny doing this too. So she's really like the epitome of not only doing well, but also, doing well financially for herself.
No, that's a great point. And I love that you picked someone who really, to me, exemplifies what the wealth mindset is all about. And that is turning problems into opportunities, and that you can create value. Because going back to my point earlier about what they don't want you to know about wealth is how financial ignorance is expensive, right? And there's a great example of us using things like bank payday loans and that sort of thing to finance their, to feel like that's the only avenue that we have, and not realize that we're charging more. A true story, my father had dementia. And so I took over his finances, and I didn't realize that he had been using these check cashing places, even though he had money in the bank. But my brother shared with me, oh, well, he would do that. It was convenient. And he would just tell me, take him there. And I didn't really know, what he was doing. And when I looked at the kind of interest that was being charged, it would have been just so much easier for him to be able to go to the bank, but he no longer drove. He had become ill. And so kudos to Sheena for finding ways to serve our community. Now I want to talk just a minute, Cassandra, about the strategy around so many in our community talk about fear, are playing it safe. And what I mean by that, they're trying not to lose, right? Playing not to lose. So they feel, but what they don't realize is that you can't win that way. Right. And so to that end, what strategy would you convey to someone who knows they need to take more risk, if you will? You're certainly stocks and stilettos society, but they don't know where to start. What strategy would you give for them?
Yeah, I think that you have to have a plan when it comes to your money, right? You have to tell your money where to go. And so at the end of the day, you've got to be able to say, okay, I'm starting with $10,000 and I want to grow this money to $1 million, right? That may be your plan to go from A to Z. And so start with that end in mind, then you can start to figure out, okay, what do I need to put in place to get to this $1 million mark or $500,000 mark, right? Celebrate some of the small wins along the way. And then the strategy would be to find people or find, again, resources that are going to help align you with getting your goals. So that could be reading a book. It could be taking a class. It could be doing, some other community-oriented program. And so starting where you are, you really have to assess, okay, well, I'm here. I'm starting from scratch. I know absolutely nothing, or, I got a little bit of stock. I got a 401k plan. Let me seek out help from my HR department and see what resources they have.
That's good. One of the figures that you have in the book, you talk about fearless figures, is Sylvia Hall. And the fact is that so many Black women have a lot of student loan debt. Can you share why you felt like she was a good figure to put in your book in terms of having around fearless finances?
Yeah, Sylvia was someone who I came across by way of a recommendation. We were looking for someone who had achieved financial independence, retired early, where basically she had accumulated enough money to stop working. And so we wanted to hear her story. We wanted to hear how she actually went about being able to achieve FIRE, because that's something that we actually don't get a lot of exposure on. Like, how can I retire early? Right. And so what I've come to learn is that exposure equals expansion. And so as we got into her story, we got to really hear like how she actually put the pieces together to be able to retire early. That doesn't mean that she stopped working altogether, but having that pressure lifted off of your back where you don't have to work and you want to work, it's just a different feeling. You take a different approach to having much more purposeful work in your life. And so her story basically was that she came out of college, she didn't have a job, she had all of this debt from law school, and she really wanted to attack the debt. And so in attacking the debt, it prompted her to really make some strategic moves around acquiring real estate, around taking on a second job, to be able to eliminate that debt quickly and then start to save towards being able to have the option of working and not the necessity of working.
Well, it is, you know, what I found fascinating about her story is here's someone who was in the negative, you know what I mean, significantly, and yet it created a sense of urgency that once she started applying it on the negative side, it just took on a life of its own and accelerated her overall financial growth. I mean, there are some amazing, amazing stories in your book about women who took a negative and made it a positive. And, you know, I love that term in terms of, you know, negative net worth to positive net worth. I think we can look at that under so many lenses. But when we come back, I want to talk to you about execution, because I often say that knowledge is not power. Knowledge correctly applied is. And when we come back, we're going to talk with Cassandra about how, first of all, you need to go and get her book, Fearless Finances. You can find it on any bookseller, at any bookseller or platform. But now, how do you actually take this information, take some of what we've learned from these fearless figures and apply it? We'll be right back. Are the only bins that will accommodate larger rollerboards.
They put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you eat 10.
Oh my God.
I'm Deborah Owens, and we're getting wealthy, by learning how to be fearless with our finances, specifically with some examples from the book, Fearless Finances, Women Who Became Fearless Figures. Let's welcome Cassandra Cummings back to Get Wealthy. Cassandra, I've been so inspired by so many of the stories. I do want to talk just a minute about execution. And one of the points that you make in the book is, you know, all of these fearless figures, you identified them for what specific strategies do you feel like they had that were similar, that allowed them to have the kind of success that they've had in so many different areas of their finances?
Yeah, I think one of the most common things is, again, team, or, having a money team, having other people help you. This is not something that you can really achieve on your own. So whether it's through a financial advisor, whether it's through some sort of money mentor or things like that, I just can't echo that enough, stress that enough, that you really do have to have someone really, open up the door, hold your hand, and getting to the next level. And I think that's something that our community has a hard time with. People in our community are very prideful. I don't need anybody. I could do it on my own type of attitude. And I think if you shift that, you can find that your financial goals and objectives are within reach and relatively quickly. And so you don't have to necessarily belabor the process, if you will, by really trying to spin your wheels and figure this stuff out on your own. The Fearless Figures, they each have taken on something different. We have Devon Reeves in there, who has taken on the approach of building wealth through hotel investment in hotel ownership. We have Robin Watkins, who took on being able to create SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies, which is a form of collecting money and then being able to help other companies grow their businesses and then hopefully become publicly traded. That is something that, I think they're one of the first minority owned SPACs. And when they launched a $126 million fund to help Black and brown businesses not only scale, but eventually go public. And that is definitely unheard of. And then you have, people in there, like I mentioned, Sheena Allen, Sylvia Hall. You've got Makita Smith, who is blazing trails in the real estate industry. And she's now opened up an international real estate office over in Dominican Republic. And so you've got all of these different women who are leading charges in some form or fashion in their own lane. They figured out their own ministry, and they are, making things happen in those respective industries. And so I would just say, take a look at those stories, and hopefully there is something that resonates with you that will trigger you to move differently when it comes to your money.
You've brought up something that is recurring in each of these segments, and I think it's so important in that our audience understand, and it is the need to reach beyond your current level of network and circumstance. I do believe that often we have to be careful of the advice that we seek. You specifically talked about having a money team. And I believe that so many of us, and myself included for years, took advice from our friends, right? Who we kind of were all at the same level in terms of socioeconomically, not really understanding that in order to get to the next level, someone has to take you there. And I find that, and it's interesting, we were just interviewing someone and they were saying, yeah, I was doing all the free stuff and thinking that I could get somewhere. And it was not until I actually invested in something that, that would give me the kind of insight that I needed, because free advice is just, it's just that. That's the reason it's free. And you said something that I think is so important. And I would love it if you could double click on it from your own personal perspective, Cassandra, and that is, what do you feel like has made the most impact in terms of a relationship for your own personal growth and success? Mm-hmm. What's the one thing?
The one thing I think is just being able to really feel energy from certain people. If I wanted to maybe get assistance from someone, just really being able to better understand their energy towards helping me. And if the energy is off balance and they're not really open to helping me, really understanding how to compartmentalize that, not take it personal, and then seek out other people who can help me, whether that be free or paid. I'm not against the free 99 way of getting help, but at some point you've got to be able to layer that with, maybe some paid assistance as well. But I think in this whole game of finance and becoming fearless, it just boils down to relationships. And so I would employ you to definitely work on that skill set. Stanford's MBA program, they spend a significant amount of time on interpersonal skills and beefing up the touchy-feely aspect of relationship building. And if you look at and study any millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires, it really boils down to the relationships that they have, because those are going to be the people when a deal comes across the table, when a real estate investment opportunity comes across the table, they're going to keep you in mind, or they're going to be looking out for your best interest and say, hey, we've got this deal that we're looking for investors in, or we're looking for this opportunity to fund, in your name. You want your name to come up when those opportunities come across someone's desk. And so that's going to boil down to just absolute relationship building. And so if you feel like you need to work on that particular skill set, I would employ you to take a course or to get out there and really push yourself to network and shake some hands. We've got someone that says, she's the queen of the warm handshake. And so it's very important for you to understand that at the end of the day, relationship building equates to financial success.
That's good. That's good. That's great advice, Cassandra. The book that is still in my bookcase and that I gave to my son, and I give to anyone who's starting out their career is very old school, but I actually took his course, and it's How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. That's it. Yeah, that's great advice. So when we come back, classic. When we come back, Cassandra, it's our lightning round, and it's analyze, optimize, maximize. Now we're going to talk about how you can put all of the insight that you've heard on today's program into action so that you can get wealthy. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Deborah Owens. I'm America's Wealth Coach, and we're helping you get wealthy this week with Cassandra Cummings. She's the author of Fearless Finances, and it's Black History Month, and we're talking about some of the fearless figures in her book. Cassandra, it's our Analyze, Optimize, and Maximize segment, and I know we've covered a lot. But, what I want this audience to know is that they can always go and get your book so that they can get additional insight. But let's talk about you interview these women. And that's why I love interviewing people like yourself, of course, because you can always bring different perspective. But as you look at the impact that these women made, what can you tell our audience about how they need to analyze if they were reading your book and it become applicable to their own lives and relevant and make an impact?
Yeah, the book is actually broken into 3 different areas. The first area is really about survival. I think Black people or people of color usually are fighting their way, clawing their way out of survival mode. And so the first part of the book really helps to attack that, if you will. How do we get beyond just surviving? And then we get into the second part of the book once we have created, this way of getting out of survival mode into stability. Okay, now I'm at a point where I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, or I've got, this banking thing down. I'm ready to move on and make sure that my investments are set up properly. And so that second part of the book, we're looking at things like buying property, buying real estate, setting up your retirement funds correctly, looking at different options with being able to look at possibly other alternative investments, right? So this is that introduction to stability. Okay, now how do I create a firm financial footing so that I don't get put back into survival mode? And then we go into that third phase, which is surplus. So now everything is firing on all cylinders. I have a disposable income. I'm ready to actually make my money start working for me. And so that third section is looking at real estate investments. It's looking at creating a dividend income portfolio with your stock investments, which is, pretty much passive income opportunities, and looking at other investment opportunities such as angel investing as well. And so that's pretty much the third area that I cover. So those would be the three: survival, stability, and surplus.
That's good. Cassandra, the other question I'd like to ask is, for some people, what I have found is that that conservative nature, particularly if you look at Black Americans and how we are investing our dollars, only 65%, well, not only 65% of Black American households don't own equity investments. And part of that, I think, is why the wealth gap is so wide. So what advice would you give someone listening to this program about what they could do to accelerate the type of growth that they have, so that they're not just saving, they're actually growing, investing and growing?
Right. So you can't save your way to prosperity, number one. Number two, Black women are the highest educated population in the country. And so it's really not a money issue, it's a priority issue. And I think that women in general, because that's pretty much who I serve in terms of demographics, they have to really educate themselves on how money works. And because they're able to go to school, they're able to get, multiple degrees. But when it comes to their actual net worth, they didn't take that class. And so they now have to, find time to be able to educate themselves and become literate in money matters. And so that's what we do in the Stocks and Stiletto Society, is that we really help them close that education gap so that they in turn can close that investment gap. And so that's really important to me, because it's really not that we don't know any better. We're choosing not to learn how money works, put our head in the sand and say, "Oh, I'll deal with that later." And we can't continue to do that.
Yeah, well, you know what? It is interesting. This is what I find fascinating and frustrating at the same time, is that we have all this education. However, how is it even possible that we would go through high school, we would go through undergrad, we would go through an MBA, we would get a PhD, and in many cases, Cassandra, those courses around investments and personal finance are not even, in some cases they could be an elective, I'm not going to argue that, but should be intertwined and integrated into what is a basic foundation, not an elective, but a requirement. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. You're a USC grad. I want to know, was there anything that was covered that you're now providing your community with in your formal education?
Well, in my formal education, I'm an accountant by trade. And so most of my courses in instruction centered around how to help major companies make money and watch their money. But I'm a small corporation, and I needed to learn how to apply that myself, right? I think Fidelity calls it your personal economy. And so there aren't courses on how to, effectively scale your personal economy. And so you really may have to seek out those courses, because if you're taking courses in the STEM area, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, those courses, those schemas, if you will, they're not set up to integrate financial independence or anything like that. All of these majors are really set up to help you become skilled at a particular trade or, career. And so that's why it's really personal, because you have to figure out what's going to work for you. It's also systemic, right? A lot of this knowledge that we get in personal finance come from our own backgrounds, our families, our moms, our dads, our grandmothers. And so if they didn't get the skills, if they didn't get the experience, how in fact can they impart that on us? So a lot of us are starting from scratch. A lot of us are learning this on the go around because we did not have this available to us in school. We did not have it available to us at home. And so I think that's why, again, you've got to seek out organizations, you've got to seek out professionals that can really help you, hold you by the hand, and get you to where you want to go.
I'm so glad you said that. And one of the reasons that I really asked that question is because I do find that the fear of investing, the need to, focus on not losing as opposed to gaining is directly correlated to that disconnect, that lack of exposure to risk, that understanding, like if you were investing and the market went down and your family had been investing for years, and they would say, oh no, don't be fearful of that. That's just natural. And in fact, that can work in your favor. If you don't have that person telling you that, if you didn't grow up with that, then that's why I love the title of your book, Fearless Finances, because I would submit to you that so much of our lack of ownership of those assets are just a lack of exposure and a lack of experience.
Yeah, I mean, exposure equals expansion. And so one thing at USC, I got exposed to what wealth really looked like. I went into fraternity houses where, white male students resided, and I got a chance to see, how they were living. And a lot of the times they actually hired out Black cooks. There were Black cooks working in these frat houses. And so it just gave me a whole different perspective on how they navigate finance, how they go about accumulating wealth, and how they take care of their children at school, which was way different. I was lucky if I got a care package. So yes, definitely a lot different.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Cassandra, why I loved having this conversation with you was that we're talking about generational wealth. And so when we come back, I want to share the three takeaways from today's show. So don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Well, we've covered a lot on today's show, Fearless Finances. And before I close out on the three things, I'd like to welcome Cassandra Cummings back on the show, on Get Wealthy, to just give us a closing comment. Cassandra, if you could sum up what we've talked about today, particularly in the perspective of Black History Month, what would you say to our audience?
I would say the three things. I'd give you a few different ways to look at it. You got to plan, save, and invest. So you got to make a plan for your money, right? That is key. You've got to begin with the end in mind. Where do you see yourself going with your finances? And then you've got to save. You've actually got to put those things in place because it takes money to make money. So what are you doing to accumulate savings, to maybe add a side hustle or a multiple income stream strategy to building up this stockpile of money for you to deploy into that third aspect, which is investing, right? I always like to say each of your dollar bills are like employees. What are your employees doing to bring you even more money? No one wants to have employees sitting around not making money for them. And so if you put each of your dollars to work for you, then that means you have to do less work, and put all your money to work for you. So I would say plan, save, and invest. And then on the other side of that, I would say, make, manage, and multiply. So that would be an extension, and that may be for another conversation.
I love it when you leave us hanging, right? Excellent show. So let me just share with our audience. Here are the three takeaways from today's show. First, as our guest would say, mind right, money right. Secondly, money loves speed, so you've got to take action. And then finally, as our guest would say in her book, and I want to make sure you go out and get it, that your bank account should match your handbag. Well, that's going to do it for me that's going to do it for me on this episode of Get Wealthy. Keep watching only on Black Star Network.